We're about to start this hair restoration for this gentleman, and what we're showing today are the potential hairline designs that are feasible for different types of donor hair that is available. This gentleman has relatively limited donor hair, and what the point of this video is to show you that we can actually create a beautiful hairline and reconstruct what we call a frame to the head. So it's not quite as low as would be a frame to the face, but still a beautiful frame, so someone sitting in front of him and looking at him would see that he has actually hair across his entire scalp. It just wouldn't be a relatively low hairline. So this is really a frame to the head. So the potential is still there to recreate the entire head, even though he has relatively sparse and limited donor hair. The nice thing also is that we can actually reinforce this using body hair transplants in the future if he needs that, and he actually has pretty good chest hair to do that with. So let's talk about some of the design elements of this hairline. First, starting out from here is, where does the hairline end? We talked about this in the text, which is at the lateral canthus, or the outer portion of the eye right here. All of what you're seeing outside of this portion is temple hair and what we call the lateral hump, which is the area that recedes downward. As you notice over here, he actually has more recession on the left lateral hump. This goes a farther distance, so we've got to do more reconstruction on the left and the right. And all of this is designed based on where the outer portion of the eye is, because anything that's further out than this is temple hair or lateral hump hair, and it is not hairline hair. As you see here, the really important thing is to match the temple recession, which is this area right here, to the hairline, so that there is a similar angle and recession. This is a very conservative pattern, because the problem is that if you push the hairline forward and you don't reconstruct the temple, it's creating that lid effect where there's an imbalance between the two. This is over here is above the vertex transition point. Remember, the vertex transition point can be considered a posterior hairline. It's an area where the horizontal scalp starts to transition down into the vertical portion of the scalp. And normally, ideally, we reach this red line, which is where the crown actually literally begins. But the problem here is, again, the amount of recession. So we want everything to match well. We want the temple to match the hairline to match the posterior, quote-unquote, posterior hairline. And so the amount of recession that goes back this way should match the amount of recession going this way. So this is a more conservative pattern that rests anterior or in front of the vertex transition point right here. What we've shown in the red line right here and is really a hairline that frames the face. And so this is something that hopefully will be achievable in the future, maybe with some blending with body hair. But honestly, what we're probably going to be having to be limited to for this gentleman is more this pattern right here, and then reinforcing his existing hairs in the future. This hairline is what we would call still a conservative frame to the face, and it's not even at that transition zone between the horizontal and vertical planes that we talked about, the lowest acceptable anterior point. The lowest acceptable anterior point is actually in the blue. That would be someone that has very little temporal recession or has enough donor hair that we can not only fill the entire hairline, but we can go in there and fill also all the way down to the temple, because remember, we have to match the hairline with the temple. And so this is just showing you sort of three stages here of what would be possible in a gentleman with potentially more donor hair that's available. And the key here is not just so much how much recession we're seeing back here that defines donor hair, it's also the donor density. This gentleman doesn't have significant donor density, but enough for us to carry out what we want to do here to create a beautiful shape, hairline, and a very, very natural pattern that matches both temple recession and hairline. So again, this is framing the head, that's framing the face, and this is aggressive framing the face based on what would be available for potentially another gentleman. So hopefully that's a nice, simple introduction to hairline design for gentlemen of different degrees of recession.